Good morning, afternoon, evening to our audience across several different time zones. My name is Jackson Howard, and I'm the regional coordinator here at EURAXESS North America. For a really brief introduction to us, the EURAXESS project is an initiative of the European Commission aimed at promoting Europe as a research destination. So we highlight funding opportunities, provide career development services, and support the European scientific diasporas in the United States and Canada. So it's only natural that we sit down with European officials and learn more about the research landscape in their countries. So today it's a pleasure to host our first virtual coffee chat with a science diplomat of 2021. And after an initial conversation with Ireland, it was clear that the country is doing so much that we thought it would be great to expand this to hear from multiple perspectives about Irish science and Irish research development innovation. So I'm joined today by two great representatives, Counsellor Harry Lester of the Embassy of Ireland to the US and Dr. Aoife Ryan of Science Foundation Ireland. So just for some quick housekeeping, I will encourage you to submit your questions via the questions box here in Zoom, and we'll address those at the end of the interview. And with that, I'll jump right in and open with the same question as always. Harry and Aoife, can you tell us about what you do now and your career path that brought you to where you are?
Sure. Thanks, Jackson, and it's great to be with you all this morning. Just as a pre-warning before I go into my career path, it's a bit of a circuitous path and one I wouldn't necessarily recommend people take if you are already in the sciences, but I'm not a scientist per se, but I do work on science policy at the moment. So the Irish Civil Service gives great opportunity for developing a whole range of skills and expertise in all sorts of areas, be that developing legislation, serving the political system, project management, working on all sorts of issues. And I've taken full advantage of that. So I started in the Irish Civil Service back in 2004, working in the Irish Parliament for 2 European Affairs committees. It was a great start for myself. I'd grown up in England and I'd studied sports science back in Bath. So this was completely new to me, and took the advantage to do some further study while I worked, ultimately ending up with a postgraduate diploma in policy analysis and a master's in leadership and strategy. I moved from the Irish Parliament to the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, where I worked developing EU legislation to help the free movement of products and goods within the EU single market. I then went on a year out to the Department of Finance, working on macroeconomic briefing, and in particular working with the IMF and OECD on their study visits to Ireland and reports on the Irish economy. I returned to the Department of Enterprise in 2011, where I worked on implementing the Companies Act, which was a huge consolidation of company law in Ireland that required huge system development changes in the company's registration office and a big communications campaign. So I spent some time there. I then came into the corporate services division in 2016, working on leading the HR directorate and implementing major civil service reform in the area of HR strategies. And that's where I am today. So you can see very varied, and you're probably wondering what has any of that to do with science, but hopefully I'm coming to that now. So my current role is working in the Embassy of Ireland in the Embassy in Washington, DC. I lead our economic team here. And I really have 3 focuses to my portfolio. The first one is tracking and US developments on trade policy and working on EU-US trade relations, in particular the bilateral relationship between Ireland and the United States. Secondly, it's tracking science policy developments, and at the moment it's exciting time.
Here, I'll just briefly interrupt to say I think I might have lost your audio maybe 10 or 15 seconds ago, if you can happen to hear me.
And I'll mention this again, but on a Team Ireland basis, where we're working to promote trade and investment in both directions between Ireland and the United States. And I might just finish up then just explaining within the embassy, we're split across 4 teams. We have the political and consular services, we have justice and home affairs, we have a foreign policy team, and that's a big focus for us at the moment because we have a 2-year seat on the United Nations Security Council. And then finally, the economic policy area, which I head up. And really that team has grown quite considerably over the last couple of years. It's sort of doubled in size. We're a reasonably small team, but still we've doubled in size. That was part of Ireland's the Irish government's Global Ireland strategy back in 2018, where due to Brexit and other headwinds in the global economy and environment, we decided we needed to double our footprint right across overseas locations. And my role as a result of that, I think, kind of reflects the priority that the Irish government place on the market here in the United States, and both developing the trade and investment links, but also the research and development connections as well.
And Aoife, I'll ask the same of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson, and many thanks for showcasing Ireland for the first iteration of this in 2021. So my route to science started with my undergraduate studies at University College Cork, where I qualified with a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmaceutical chemistry in 2005. I was fortunate following my undergraduate studies to take up a position at a pharmaceutical company, Bristol Myers Squibb, where I worked for about 2 years as a quality control analyst. But in my pursuit of my love of organic chemistry, I then took the decision to undertake a PhD at Trinity College Dublin, and that was under the supervision of Professor Matthias Senger, where there was a focus on organic chemistry and the synthesis of tetrapyrrolic compounds. I then held a postdoctoral research fellow position at Trinity College up until the time I joined Science Foundation Ireland in 2015. So SFI, Science Foundation Ireland, is the primary competitive funder of STEM research in the country, and I've held 3 roles in that organisation since 2015. So I started as a scientific program manager, managing a portfolio of around 150 research awards, spanning numerous sectors, including chemistry, material science, immunology research. And in addition to that, I worked on policy development aspects, including kind of areas such as research integrity. I also led on the project management of large-scale reviews and funding renewals. I then took up a posting as SFI's first overseas staff member in the United States, where I was international development lead for the organization. And based in California, my focus here was really around building strategic alliances for Irish researchers with US companies, with philanthropic organizations, and with academic institutions. And the role also involved raising the awareness of the contribution and impact of SFI and Irish science and technology within the US in collaboration with Team Ireland agencies. I continue to lead on transatlantic relationships in my current role on the Enterprise Partnerships team, where my main focus is on scaling industry academic partnerships. So I'll leave it there, Jackson, and thanks for again for inviting us to be part of this event.
That's a great overview, and I know a lot of the questions that we get at the end are sort of evenly split between people's interest in the country and then also career paths in science policy, science diplomacy, and in fields like these. If I could just ask the same question, but not about personal career trajectory, but the growth and trajectory of Ireland itself and its RDI journey growth, as you mentioned, I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. And it's a story I suppose we're very proud of in Ireland. We came from a very low base of economic development for quite a lot of the 20th century, but some really key decisions were made by the Irish government really in the late 1950s, early 1960s to open up the Irish economy to trade and investment, to lower or remove or entirely our tariffs, and undertake industrial policy that stimulated Ireland as a trading hub, and as part of that, which involved seeking accession to the European Union, which came later in 1970s, we invested heavily in universal access to secondary education, which was a really critical part of the development and ensuring that we could take advantage of the benefits of membership of the European Union. Has proved extremely effective and sort of is one of the reasons why Ireland is such a successful economy today. Our journey into research, development, and innovation sort of came a little bit later. And I suppose what I'd point back to as a really key turning point was sort of the late 1990s, early 2000s, when the government made a key decision in the year 2000 actually to significantly increase its public investment into research and development and innovation. And we saw a little bit later the development of a major strategy for science, technology, and innovation that spanned sort of the decade of the mid-noughties up to around 2014-15. As part of that strategy, Ireland established a steering group in 2010 that set about a process of research prioritization. As you know, Ireland is a reasonably small country, sort of just under 5 million people in the Republic, and we can't do everything, but we can do some things very, very well, and we focus very specifically on that. And in 2012, out of that steering group process, the government announced 14 priority areas, and there's been some good consistency with that right up to the current day. They have been refreshed. They were refreshed in 2018, and they include areas amongst others of sort of emerging and future technologies that are going to be very important for the global economy, and in which Ireland have a competitive advantage around artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, quantum computing, some of these really, really important areas. In the whole health area, therapeutics, diagnostics, a number of areas there. Sustainable food production. Ireland's a huge exporter of food right across the world, and a very important part of us, but also sustainable energy and advanced manufacturing as well. So just to name a few of them there. Our most recent strategy was called Innovation 2020 and spanned from 2015 to 2020, and really had a hugely ambitious target of sort of bringing Ireland into a global innovation leader, and something we're still striving for today, and to greatly increase, again, the investment into research, development, innovation. So some key features within that strategy is set targets to draw down 1.25 billion worth of funding from the European Union under their framework programs. It sort of established 6 enterprise themes within which those 14 research priorities fit within, and they're ICT, health and medical, food, energy, manufacturing and materials, and then in innovation in services and business processes. They're all areas that Ireland are extremely active and effective in, both from an enterprise and research perspective. We sought to expand our network of research centres, which I'm sure Aoife will talk to you about, which have been incredibly critical, strengthen our incentives for intellectual property, stimulate our skills base, which I'll mention a minute shortly, around increasing research masters and PhDs in Ireland, modernize public services, and build further streams of international cooperation. So just to pull out, I'll pull out a couple of points within that are sort of, I think, quite novel and interesting, hopefully, to the listeners today. One of the things that we did back in 2018 is we set out a 10-year funding stream of €500 million into de-risking companies and researchers' investment into disruptive technologies. And that funding was contingent on collaboration between academia and industry, and sort of points to the unique feature of the Irish system that given that we're small, we're an ideal size. We're an ideal size for test beds. We're an ideal size for collaboration between universities and research centres, and interaction with industry, particularly our multinational base, and the government. So that's ongoing. There were some really exciting projects coming out of that. The other interesting thing we did is invested 100 million into 700 postgraduate researchers, specifically in the areas of digital, data, and ICT. And again, that's going to be integral to Ireland's future economy and jobs. I suppose what's been the results from this sort of sustained focus and investment in research, development, and innovation? Well, Ireland has come up the rankings significantly, and our investment into research and development has increased. Over the last 25 years, private sector investment into research and development has skyrocketed from 800 research and development active firms with a research spend of just 300 million to where we are today of over 1,800 research and development firms. But importantly, those firms are spending approximately 3.25 billion. So huge increase there. Our overall investment in research and development and innovation has been increasing steadily every year. Again, if we look back to, say, 2011, where we're spending 2.56 billion, so we come up significantly from that very low base I mentioned earlier, to 4.37 billion in 2019. So that's a rise of 71% in just 8 years. Government investment has also been increasing steadily. We're at 869 million in 2019 compared to 719 million just a couple of years earlier. And we're certainly not finished. We certainly want to have further to go on a journey, but we have come a long way, and hopefully that shows you a little bit of it. Currently, we're identified as a strong innovator within the European Union. We're ranked as 9th on the European Innovation Scorecard. We're 15th out of 131 countries in the Global Innovation Scorecard. But I think one of the really interesting things about Ireland, if you look within the European Union context, is we're one of the most efficient in terms of our outputs relative to the investment that we put in. So, for example, we outrank 10 other European member states who actually invest more heavily in research and development because of the methods that we do it within. But listen, I'll leave it there, Jackson, but hopefully I've given you an overview of the journey that we've been on and that we are very much still on.
Thank you so much. Absolutely, and Aoife, if you have any additional perspectives from SFI's point of view, I'm happy to hear those.
Great, Jackson, and I suppose just to kind of come in on Harry's last comment around, Ireland being a strong innovator, and SFI's vision is for Ireland to become a global innovation leader by 2025. And I suppose just to kind of present a little bit about the history of SFI and how it features within the landscape in Ireland. So we were actually originally established as an enterprise agency over 20 years ago. And we're Ireland's national foundation for research and the largest Irish competitive funding agency. We've about 100 staff members, and we've an annual capital budget of close to 210 million. So we fund excellent research and talent, and that shapes the future of Ireland through anticipating what's next and widening engagement and collaboration. And SFI was actually modelled on the US National Science Foundation, and we fund research in Ireland's higher education institutes, often in partnership with industry or other national and international funders. And we ensure that we're only funding world-class research by engaging international experts, all of whom are based outside of Ireland, to review research proposals that SFI receives. And in addition to funding excellent research, SFI promotes and assists the development and competitiveness of industry and enterprise and employment in Ireland. So we very much so work closely with our enterprise agencies. And we also promote and support the study of education and engagement in STEM, and promote the awareness and understanding of the value of STEM to society and to the growth of the economy. Just to comment on some of the rankings that Harry mentioned in his remarks, Ireland has gone on a journey, and we're now ranking 12th in terms of quality of scientific research globally. And this is a marked increase owing to increased investment by the state to Irish research and the establishment of SFI in 2000. We rank extremely high across disciplines such as material sciences, immunology and agricultural research. And since 2012, and owing largely to the formation of the SFI, the network of SFI research centres, which represents the largest investment into the state for industry academic partnerships, we've seen a tenfold increase in companies investing in public research, which is quite significant. And these centres are providing world-leading capacity in important areas of research for the Irish economy, and they help to attract and retain foreign direct investment in Ireland. They help to grow Indigenous industry with research excellence and global thought leadership at its core. So I think it's kind of very intertwined, and we very much so work with our enterprise agencies towards that mission.
Great, thank you so much. Harry, in one of your earlier comments, you had mentioned from about 2 decades ago, approximately, the Irish government creating certain priorities and focusing on development. And in a previous conversation, you had explained to me that the Irish government actually created an entirely new ministry that helps focus more directly on RDI. So I was hoping you could expand on that.
Yeah, certainly. As I said, Jackson, we're certainly not finished yet. And last year we saw a really interesting development, an important development at the formation of the new government in Ireland last year after elections. Ireland established the Department for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Skills. And that's the first time we've had a dedicated department led by a cabinet minister responsible for this portfolio. Previously, that was shared between the other departments who had a wider focus. It was driven at the highest levels by our Taoiseach, which is our Prime Minister, who drove that development, and really demonstrates the importance and the continued attention that the Irish government places on skills, knowledge, research, and innovation as drivers of the economic recovery that we're on after COVID, but also their place within a prosperous economy and society going forward. That department, I understand, is currently developing a new strategy, a successor to Innovation 2020, to really drive our RDI ambitions further, as Aoife said, to become this global innovation leader. That's at a developmental stage at the moment, and Consult is a stage, but it's considering a few broad areas which I'll mention, which will be familiar to listeners because they're similar to some of those themes that are happening right across the world in science ministries. First is sort of considering how Ireland moves more and more to an open research environment. Secondly, we're looking at some of the research infrastructure deficits and how to actually address those to ensure that we continue to attract and conduct really excellent research. And then finally, just equipping our own national ecosystem, which Aoife just mentioned a minute ago, to maximize the funding opportunities that are available internationally, particularly under the EU framework programs. The research ecosystem, although we now have this focal government department leading it, which is welcome, is varied and diverse, and there's still a number of other government departments that are feeding into policy through a sort of an interdepartmental process. There's our academic institutes, there's the industry groups and the funding agencies, and just to mention, sort of there's four main funding agencies that provide public investment into the higher education system, and those are the Higher Education Authority, the Irish Research Council, Enterprise Ireland, and obviously most centrally Science Foundation Ireland, and obviously Aoife can maybe give you more of an insight into SFI's work within this new framework.
Thanks, Harry. And I suppose, since January of this year, Science Foundation Ireland is an agency of the new Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. And with that, we launched our new strategy for 2025 in March of this year. And this followed an extensive consultation with the wider research community and all and other stakeholders, which included some US counterparts, including the National Science Foundation. So our strategy, Shaping Our Future, was developed in alignment with government's national ambition for Ireland to become a global leader in research and innovation. The strategy seeks a balanced portfolio underpinned by excellence, talent and skills, targeting first mover advantage in new areas of discovery. And it really sees research in Ireland in meeting the current challenges that exist and seizing future opportunities to benefit Ireland's economy and society. So in response to current challenges Ireland is facing, the strategy optimizes Ireland's ability to prepare for future crises and to scale its knowledge economy. So as we prepare for Ireland's future, science will play a crucial role in helping us as a country anticipate what's next and plan for our future skills and collaborate with the research community, industry, citizens, agencies and government. And these ambitions are addressed under two pillars within our strategy: delivering today and preparing for tomorrow. So delivering today focuses on developing Ireland's top talent, building our excellent research base and maximising tangible benefits to benefit Ireland in the immediate future. And preparing for tomorrow seeks to position Ireland to take first mover advantage on new and emerging fields. And to do this, SFI will focus on anticipating what's next by working collaboratively across the research ecosystem. I suppose just to point out as well, and Harry mentioned about, international funding, we are at the forefront of collaborating with other funders. We have funding partnerships with national funders, but also internationally, and I mentioned the National Science Foundation. We also have a suite of dynamic programs that facilitate industry academic collaboration. And as part of our strategy, we will continue to develop our industry-facing programs to deliver significant private-public partnerships, increase collaboration, support foreign direct investment, and engage SMEs in research and innovation. So thanks, Jackson, for that. And I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. I'm getting a sense just from your answers that are separate but addressing the same question. You represent, I would say, fairly different aspects of government, yet you're both very aware of what your both agencies are doing or organizations are doing. So can you talk sort of philosophically about the government as a whole, or in your individual roles, what the coordination looks like between all different Irish agencies? This is not a case of one hand not, the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. So I think this is probably a success story to follow.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Jackson. I mean, I mentioned, I think earlier, that sort of one of the strands of my role is working with the diplomatic network here in the United States, but also our state agencies in sort of pursuing and hopefully increasing and strengthening that US-Irish trade and investment and research relationship. And we do that sort of quite intentionally. I mean, while I work in DC and I'm very much plugged into what's happening here in Congress, but also in the administration, we have consul generals who are spread right across the United States in 7 different locations, from Atlanta to Austin to Chicago to New York to Los Angeles, San Francisco. Let me see, am I missing anybody else? Maybe I get killed later. Boston as well. Can't forget Boston if we're talking about science. And then we have a whole range of state agencies, which I'll just go into what they do now, who are often co-located or located in some of those same locations. And we're always looking at expanding that there's other locations that we may go into. So the state agencies all have distinct, and we all have our own distinct views, whether it's sort of from a policy perspective in the embassy, or whether it's from a commercial perspective, or whether it's from a research or a tourism perspective. But hugely powerful synergies when we work together. So the state agencies that are present here in the United States, we have Enterprise Ireland to assist Indigenous Irish companies to export, scale up, and become present in the US market. A lot of people are aware of the story of US foreign direct investment into Ireland, but often aren't aware that even Ireland, given its relatively small size, is the 9th largest foreign direct investor into the United States, where our companies are employing over 110,000 people here. So it's a significant story there. Board Beer is our food and drink promotion agency. Food and drink is our largest indigenous export, and the United States is a hugely important market for us. We then have IDA, which is sort of looking at the other direction, looking at attracting US multinational companies to set up in Ireland. Ireland's a unique destination for foreign direct investment because it gives access to the lucrative European single market and the big consumer base there of sort of 500 million people. And Ireland being English speaking, highly educated and sort of dynamic, and very similarly culturally to America means that we're a real location of choice. Science Foundation Ireland, Aoife will talk more about this, work very closely within that team, and particularly with the IDA, looking to develop and strengthen international partnerships between Irish researchers and academia and industry here. Tourism Ireland promoted Ireland as a tourism destination, and we've had, before the COVID crisis, we had up to 2 billion travelers, 2 million travelers coming from the United States to Ireland in 2019. So a phenomenal amount of traffic between the 2 countries. And then the most recent entrant is Screen Ireland, who are working to support and promote Irish film, media, and animation. As I said earlier, we all have our individual focuses, but we try to work together. But that doesn't happen sort of by accident. We actually have a very formal local market team structure where we bring all these Team Ireland collaborators together. That's led by the ambassador here in DC. We set out a work program at the beginning of the year, and then we meet sort of quarterly to work through that. And it's really just opportunities where we can collaborate on events or issues. And just some practical examples maybe for you of that is, we work together very much on any trade missions for government ministers visiting the States. So rather than them just coming and working with one agency on maybe Irish Indigenous companies who want to come in, they're coming and meeting with multiple stakeholders on a whole range of issues, be that research, be that foreign direct investment, Irish companies exporting in, trade and investment, all sorts of things. So that can be very powerful. The diplomatic missions very much lend the convening power that we enjoy in the locations that we are to opening doors for our commercial agencies to actually come and access certain clients they might not usually. And then, as I said earlier, SFI and IDA work very powerfully together for attracting foreign direct investment that can contribute to and benefit from the research, development, and innovation ecosystem within Ireland. But I'll let Aoife talk more on that.
Great, thanks, Harry. And I suppose just to add to that, we've very strong research collaborations with the United States, with over 450 academic collaborations and over 250 industry collaborations with significant US employers in Ireland. And I suppose as a way to kind of keep building on these strong connections, that's really where the overseas or international development role came out of. And I was embedded in IDA Ireland's offices in Silicon Valley and worked very closely with the embassy in DC and consular network across the US, with a particular focus on the US West Coast to develop networks and build strategic alliances with partnerships with industry, philanthropic organizations and academic institutions. And I suppose one big example of a pure Team Ireland effort and collaboration across the agencies was a research mission which we held in December 2019, and was the first international research mission that Ireland hosted. And it was led by our Enterprise Department Secretary General, Dr. Orla Quinn. So in this, a delegation of 6 SFI research centers undertook a research mission to the Bay Area. We were highlighting their research capabilities and investments in the fields of AI, data science, machine learning, and other related areas. And it really placed a focus on, I suppose, the engagement opportunities with industry leaders across various major technology companies located HQ'd in the Bay Area, in sectors across cloud computing, autonomous vehicles, smart cities, smart manufacturing, and agri-tech and food. And I suppose it's just a really nice and a really strong example of how all of the Team Ireland agencies work together to deliver a mission which has had knock-on impacts in terms of research investment into the country from the US.
Thank you both. This is really eye-opening. Harry, with your job in particular as Counsellor for Trade, I think we've talked a lot about the two-way trade and investment. I was just hoping we could expand on science cooperation and research cooperation and how Ireland carries that out. And that may be more of a question for you, Aoife, as well, just considering your position with SFI.
Yeah, I think Aoife is best placed to answer that, Jackson.
Great, Jackson. Yeah, so SFI and the US National Science Foundation have enjoyed a deep relationship since the establishment of SFI, and the agencies are co-funders of a number of partnership programs which facilitate US-Ireland collaboration, including the tri-jurisdictional US-Ireland R&D partnership program. And this program stemmed out of the peace process and involves state agencies in the US, specifically the National Science Foundation and the NIH, in Ireland through SFI and the Health Research Board, and agencies in Northern Ireland working together to advance scientific progress by awarding grants for research on a competitive basis. So the areas funded include health, telecommunications, energy, nanotechnology, sensors, agriculture, and over 60 projects have been supported to date across different areas with a total investment of close to €100 million. And by way of example, a project funded through the US Ireland program called Credence, which is the collaborative research of decentralization, electrification, communications, and economics, involves 3 research centers from Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the United States. And what they have done is developed a roadmap for government and industry to accelerate the transitions towards electrification and decentralization. And it looks at the carbon emission reduction targets in light of electrification of heat and transport. And I suppose just to point out, and to attendees who may be interested, there will be a Credence showcase, so a showcase of this partnership taking place at the end of June, which we would be delighted if you could all attend. And this is in collaboration not only with Science Foundation Ireland, but with the Embassy of Ireland in Washington, DC.
Just on that note, if you send that to, I can either forward interested people your way, or if anyone in the chat just wants to say if they're interested in receiving a link when when the registration is open, we're happy to only for those that proactively express their interest, send this your way. I would love to have my final question be related to one of the main parts of EURAXESS North America's work, which is supporting the European scientific diasporas in the US and Canada. And I think, Harry, you mentioned a lot of similarities culturally between Ireland and the United States, and I'll add Canada into the mix here. So with that, can you tell us about Ireland's science diaspora network generally? How do you work with them? What is its makeup like? And obviously, I'll do a plug for our annual events. Every December, we host the diaspora group leaders, members, and the general public, normally in person. Last year, we had our first virtual event, and just hear their challenges, their solutions, and their commonalities. And it's really a strong network of groups that are diverse in so many ways. Some are large scientific diaspora groups. Some focus more on the humanities and the social sciences. So really, there's no one single definition I could apply to these groups, yet they all come together and are mutually supportive. And we try to do our part also to oversee that. So I'd be really curious to hear from both of your perspectives about that Irish network.
Sure, and yeah, we're no exception in that diversity, I suppose, of our scientific diaspora here. You know, we have a range of members and people involved, from senior faculty and early career professionals within academia to representatives from companies based in the energy, pharmaceutical, biotech sectors. We have policy offices who are located in various government organizations and agencies here in the United States. And then also those from sort of the communications and media communities that are interested in science. So we have been trying to engage, I suppose, more structurally with that group as a specific science group since around 2011, when the Wild Geese Network of Irish Scientists was established. It was really established to try to simply just advance awareness of the Irish contribution to the sciences here in the United States. As incorporated by a not-for-profit entity, has a board of directors, and that continues to this day. But in 2018, we changed the name of the group to the Ireland Americas Science Forum, really to reflect what the function of the network had evolved into, which is, as it stands currently today, a kind of a forum for discussion, advancement of ideas, consultancy, publicity, and engagement of Irish scientists and American scientists in common policy areas. And you mentioned COVID, Jackson, sort of doing your first virtual event last year, and certainly with these sort of networks and diaspora groups, it's been really challenging not to meet in person, because that's one of the big benefits of actually sort of connecting with the diaspora here and building those relationships. But we've also sort of tried to sort of keep active during that period, and we've done a number of really interesting kind of virtual events. And hopefully you can share the link to IASF and the website we have there, where people can tune in and sign up to future events. But over the last year, we did a really good event around women in STEM. We also did an event on quantum, physics, computing, and enterprise, which is particularly sort of relevant for us in Ireland and also yourselves here. We did a great event on Irish women's contribution to space exploration. And, you know, it's maybe a surprising one for people that there's so many Irish budding astronauts, both sort of past, present, and future, but there is, working closely with NASA. So that was a really good event. And then we did one on science and journalism in the context of COVID and climate change and the whole areas of disinformation, which was a big topic last year. And I'm sure I've missed some, but that's a selection of some of the things we've been doing. And we're continuing with those at the moment, still in a virtual format. And over the coming weeks, we actually have a really interesting event coming online, which is looking at, you know, US and Irish approaches to vaccine development and deployment and sort of tackling COVID. So that'd be good. Most of the events sort of follow a kind of a format of a panel discussion of experts on a topic of interest, and sort of really to shine an insight into sort of common issues that both Irish and American scientists are working on together. I do have to mention probably what I think is one of the highlights of our engagement with diaspora each year here in the States, and that's during the St. Patrick's Day celebrations in Washington, DC every March. And I say St. Patrick's Day, I should probably say St. Patrick's Week or even St. Patrick's Month, because it's just phenomenal, the actual welcome and access that we get here in the capital. And the Taoiseach visits every year. This year was the first time we did a virtual program, but usually he's here in person. And when he's here, we ensure that as part of his business engagements, that he presents the Science Foundation Medal to a distinguished scientist, engineer, or technologist living and working here in the United States, but with strong Irish connections. We have a recipient from academia and a recipient from industry. And it's a great way of marking really exceptional contributions. It's quite a high bar to meet. The recipients must be both outstanding in their own fields of expertise, but also have made a significant contribution to the research ecosystem. In March, our Taoiseach presented awards, the Industry Award to the CEO of Analog Devices, Vincent Roche, who has been a really tireless champion of the importance of industry investing in research and development, across the board, but certainly in Ireland. Analog Devices have been in Ireland for many, many years and are an integral part of our economy, but also our research ecosystem. And then from the academic perspective, a very worthy winner of the award this year was Nobel laureate William Campbell from Drew University, whose work with Merck and others and his lifelong research really has led to a cure for river blindness, saving literally millions of lives. So you can see the impacts that our diaspora has across the world and here in the United States. Both Vincent and William hail from Ireland, but have made significant contributions to both academia and industry here in the United States. That's a really fun event, and it's a really important one to shine a light on what's happening there. And really, that's what we'll continue doing through the IASF. We're trying to grow our network and expand our influence there, just to shine a light on the Irish-American science collaboration, all that's happening there at the moment. So we strengthen that and also hopefully grow that even further in the future.
Thank you so much. That's a great high-level overview. And I think with this, we can transition to a Q&A. What I'd like to do is, oh, by the way, Harry, you mentioned a specific event. So if we have a link available for that, what I'll do is I'll commit to sending that to our audience in an automated follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. And then any additional resources we'll be sure to send out hopefully tomorrow. And then also, if you're watching this as a recording and you visit the homepage by tomorrow, we'll have it updated with the list of the organizations that are mentioned today, so you can follow up on any of these additional agencies. So just to get a slightly better idea of our audience in attendance live right now, what I'd like to do is launch a quick poll question, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. Please submit your Q&A via the questions box at the bottom of your Zoom interface. But I'm going to launch this poll just to understand a little bit about if anyone in the audience is already based in Ireland, considering a move to Ireland for research purposes. There's no right or wrong answer, and your response is anonymous, but this way we can just have a slightly better idea of you. And I'll give a couple more seconds to this, and while we wait for the audience to complete the question, I'll mention that in a great stroke of coincidence, next Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, June 8th, EURAXESS North America, we will be co-hosting an event with EURAXESS Ireland is a fellow panelist related to making a move to Ireland for research purposes. If you want to continue your research career and go to Ireland, go back to Ireland, whether you have a European passport or not, they'll provide specific expertise and information on visas and things like that. And then also just give you a rough idea on how EURAXESS services can provide country level expertise. So regardless if you're interested in Ireland or some other European country, the idea is our counterparts based in Europe can explain all the expertise that they can provide you and country landscape questions they can answer in a way that we at EURAXESS North America perhaps would need some additional insights on. So I think I'll end the poll in a quick moment here. I have about half of the audience, I think, tuning in, and it looks like there's actually some interest. I'm really happy to see that. So I'll close this out here, and you can both see this, right? We have some answers coming in. I'll end the poll. And there we go. I think it looks like a small majority of people are interested in Ireland as a research destination. And I want to say, Harry and Aoife, this is hopefully largely because of your insights shared today. So again, with that, we'll jump right into the Q&A. I'd like to ask, I'm going to open the Q&A box. As questions come in, I'll be happy to read them. And let me open with the first question I see that's been submitted. I'm just going to read this verbatim. Thank you to the audience member for submitting this. Ireland has done a remarkable job in the past couple of decades. The big news these days is the international agreement in harmonizing business taxation around the world. This is expected to have some effect on Ireland, whose development model has a founding pillar attracting foreign MNCs. Several other EU members will also be affected. Any thoughts about the likely impact of such a development and how the R&I plans of the country may need to change? Harry, if you want to address
Thanks, Jackson. Sure, and thanks for the question. A nice, easy one. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd just start. We're watching closely both the US administration proposals that have been put out for corporate taxation changes, very much to sort of fund some of the infrastructure proposals and American Family Plan that has been published. And obviously that's yet to go into Congress and be worked through, so we'll be watching it closely. That intersects with the OECD BEPS 2 process. It's a multilateral process which is looking particularly at how to tax the digital economy, and also questions around a minimum rate of corporation tax. And you're right, the corporation tax in Ireland has been a long-standing and consistent pillar to Ireland's economic model, and it's one that continues through successive governments. We feel like that's a fair rate. It sort of is attracting real economic activity into Ireland, but it's not the only reason the companies base themselves in Ireland. And as we've talked today, the sort of the research, development, and innovation ecosystem that companies can access into, the educated population, the very young population in Ireland, our proximity to the European Union, similar legal systems to particularly here in the United States, English speaking, and similarly culturally, and our reputation for how we manage our business environment and the political stability within the country are all equally important aspects to that. Ireland has been committed to the OECD multilateral process, both the previous BEPS 1 process and the current BEPS 2 process. We recognize the need to ensure that multinational companies are taxed fairly and appropriately. We've implemented a whole range of measures to actually implement some of the recommendations from BEPS 1. The Department of Finance in Ireland publishes a corporate taxation roadmap document, and that was just recently updated, and that sets out all the developments there, the measures that Ireland have taken to work with international partners on that. And we're equally committed to this process. It's a busy month this month and next month with meetings at the G7, G20, the OECD ministerial, and we'll be watching very, very closely to see what agreements are reached there. But we're committed to it, and I think the impact it has, particularly on research, development, and innovation, just keeps the priority on it. There's a huge incentive, and the government is taking it very seriously to prepare the Irish economy for future changes, through future jobs, through the change of the economy, through Industry 4.0, and also for future taxation regimes. And our continued investment in infrastructure in Ireland, but also research, development, and innovation and education will continue to be important. And perhaps.
Thank you so much. I'll continue to encourage the audience to submit any questions. I'll be happy to go into them. Aoife, I'll just ask you a personal question regarding SFI. You had mentioned the history behind SFI. Do you mind just explaining the structure? So you said it's now part of that new government department that was established only a couple of years ago. Before that, was it sort of under several different departments? Was it under a different department, but now it's more kind of aligned with the actual RDI mission? I'm just curious if this has helped it achieve a stricter focus in that sense.
Yeah, sure, Jackson. So we actually were in the enterprise department, so the now Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, but work closely still with the agencies that are part of that enterprise department. So it was literally just a transition across. It is a new department, and in our department also are the Irish Research Council, which are another funding agency in the country. And I suppose ultimately what the new department is trying to achieve is a cohesive research ecosystem in the country, and I think it's doing a good job so far, and more to come.
Great, thank you so much. I think with that, it's been a pleasure to speak to both of you, and I've personally learned a lot about Ireland today. As I've said before, we will send a lot of these resources and events and links mentioned today in an automated follow-up email tomorrow, and I'll encourage you to follow both government agencies more closely. So thank you, Harry and Aoife, both for speaking today, and then after we'll connect offline to make sure we can send as many resources as possible to the audience and those who want to watch the recording afterwards. So thank you both. This has been a privilege today, and I want to also thank the audience for continuing to attend our virtual coffee chats, and as you said, Aoife, our inaugural edition this year. So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to the next edition. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackson. Thanks, everyone.